Then they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who were selling and those who were buying in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. He was teaching and saying, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations,' but you have made it a den of robbers."
Okay, so we're now going to focus on this section of the fig narrative sandwich sequence. And if you missed, not many did. I think most folks were here. But if you did miss that, part one of this three-part series, it is now on YouTube or on the church Facebook group. But if you wanted to search simply for "eat this fig sandwich," it will probably come up. That's probably not a phrase that people often are typing on the internet. So it should be easy to find. But just as a short recap, as we go through this and we figure out what is this sometimes difficult passage really trying to say, what is Jesus doing here? As we continue to explore, we're also going to see each week an important lesson for our lives as Christians today. And last week we determined what a Christian life looks like. And in fact, it's just that. It's a life. It's a lifestyle. It's something that happens in every moment of our lives. And how does Jesus say that happens? Is it something that we do because he tells us to? No. Jesus says you do it because you have the love of God in your heart. Right? Just like if you love pizza, you will do things that people that love pizza do. Namely, eat pizza, buy pizza, things like that, right? It's not seen as a chore. And if you love God and love people, you're going to do things that people that love God and love people are going to do. And it's not a chore, right? That's what Jesus was getting at. And this week, our question that we're going to focus on is, how should we view people that are different than us? America has a long history of different groups of people coming together, probably more famously than any place in the world. So this is very pertinent to us. And to answer this question, we of course have to go back. We have to go way back to a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. To Star Wars, sort of. Okay, to Star Wars, to help us understand something about going back into the past. This is the poster for Star Wars Episode 9. You probably couldn't miss some advertisements back in November and December of this past year, thanks to the Disney Corporation. You probably saw this advertised on TV and maybe in your Happy Meal and things like that. But there's one problem, there's one major turnoff, I think, that Disney probably had to deal with the Star Wars problem of promoting their movie. It says it's Episode 9. Episode 9. What if you've never seen any of the first 8 movies? You might say to yourself, I think, yeah, I could go and I could understand the plot of this film and I'd probably enjoy it, but I might want to hold off because there's 8 other films I haven't seen. I'm going to miss probably some of the nuances, some of the inside jokes, right? And you maybe put it off for that reason, even if you're interested in the trailer. Same thing you might do with a TV series, right? Your friend comes to you, they say, you've got to see this new series, I'm addicted to it. And it turns out it's in season 3. Well, you say to yourself, okay, I think at first I have to watch season 1, season 2, and then I'll be ready for season 3. Right? And we do that because I think we understand we might miss something. We might not get everything. We certainly can understand each episode, but we might miss the fullness of what the artist is trying to do, the filmmaker or whoever it happens to be. So you might ask yourself, well, what is the Gospel of Mark in terms of which episode of the Bible? It could be said that the Gospel of Mark is episode XL. Not extra large, of course, but the Roman numerals. We don't teach Roman numerals anymore. I know, I'm a school teacher. Does anybody know what XL is in Roman numerals?
15.
Not that. 40. Episode 40. The only time you usually see them nowadays, I think, is Super Bowl for some reason. Maybe there's a gladiatorial thing there. I don't know. But episode 40. Now, why do I call it episode 40? Well, just simply because there's 39 books in the Protestant Old Testament. That's where I'm getting that from. And even though Matthew comes first in the New Testament, the Gospel of Mark is the earliest written one. So it's kind of like episode 40. So yes, we can read the Gospel of Mark and understand the plot and understand the important main ideas, but there's going to be some things that's going to harken back to the other parts of the story, the other parts of the Bible that people already know about. And in fact, if you recall, Jesus said, "Is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations?" So what's he talking about when he says, "Is it not written"? He's talking about those earlier episodes. He's talking about the Old Testament. And so in order to really understand what Jesus is saying and why he's doing these dramatic things in the temple, we have to go back to the 8th century prophet Isaiah. And we can go to chapter 56, where Jesus is quoting this from. And God is speaking through the prophet. And he says, "Thus says the Lord, maintain justice and do what is right." Seems to be a common theme that Jesus continues, or that God says in the Old Testament to his people. "For soon my salvation will come and my deliverance be revealed. Happy is the mortal who does this, the one who holds it fast, who keeps the Sabbath, not profaning it, and refrains from doing any evil." What's God saying to his people? He's saying, you could just be successful, you could just be happy if you would only follow my teachings. Well, if God is saying that to them, what are they not doing? They're not following his teachings, right? Now, in particular, in this chapter, God is talking about a specific thing. And what they are doing is they are looking at people that are different, they're having prejudices, and they are excluding them from the worship community. And God talks about two specific groups of people. One is very common. One is all through human history, I think, people have had prejudices against. And the other is one you'd never guess. Okay, you don't really see these folks today, not very often. It's the foreigner and the eunuch. And what God says is, do not let the foreigner join to the Lord say, "The Lord will surely separate me from his people." And do not let the eunuch say, "I am just a dry tree." I think we understand the foreigner thing, because that's still around in our time today. People that are foreign, they come in, they're immigrants, they sometimes don't have a common language, they have a different culture, different ethnicity oftentimes. There's fears about, well, if too many immigrants come in, are they going to take opportunities from other people? We know a lot about the issues folks have in terms of prejudices with foreign people. But then the eunuch, what was the issue they were having? Apparently, they didn't want to associate with the eunuch and bring them into their community because they simply couldn't reproduce. They were sterile. Now that is a complete non-issue today. Nobody cares about that today. In fact, it's often thought that we need to have more of that because of overpopulation today. But isn't it interesting how sometimes the prejudices and the major concerns of one generation are completely forgotten and seen as nonsense, and sometimes even the very next generation? I'll give you an example of this from the not-so-recent American history, I suppose, actually. But back in the 19th century, here is an advertisement in a newspaper. Pretty typical. Someone has this ad, and he's selling a couple things, and he's requesting something. He's selling it's a little hard to see, but he's selling a grocery cart and a harness. And he's also selling an 8-year-old horse. And then he's looking for help. He's trying to hire, hopefully, he says, a young man between 16 to 18 years of age to do some labor for him. But then he writes something very curious that you may or not be able to see. No Irish need apply. No Irish need apply? What a weird thing. What a weird thing that sounds like today. But for many decades in the United States, the Irish were oppressed, discriminated against. I know that we remember in our own minds, many of us, and also have seen the images of the Jim Crow segregation through videos and pictures in the United States. But if you were to go back 100 years before that, you would see signs in windows that said, "No Irish," oddly enough. And I mean, really, for all practical purposes, we don't even really consider the Irish as that much of an ethnic group that we even talk about. Maybe once a year, St. Patrick's Day. I think I have a lot of Irish in me. Maybe all of us have some Irish in us, but we don't even think like that anymore. The Irish, of all people, that they were discriminating against. And of course there was the anti-Catholic sentiment and things like that. Many were coming over from the potato famine. But look at this illustration. It's a Ku Klux Klan driving an ethnic group out of the United States, and this is done in 1928, less than 100 years ago. Which ethnic group is it the Ku Klux Klan are driving out? The Irish. The Irish. Now, what's so interesting about that is, this is not scientific, it's just probably very factual, though. The Ku Klux Klan today, and they do still exist, I would venture to guess that most of the people in the Ku Klux Klan today have Irish descent. You see how bizarre that is, that changes over time? That you can be so prejudiced towards a certain group of people for whatever reason in your own time, but then it just, after a while, when you get to know someone, you realize, oh, it's nonsense. That's what God is saying to the Israelites here in Isaiah 56. Your prejudice is nonsense. And the eunuch that you mistreated, that you don't value, let me tell you something about this person that you don't value. God says, it says in verse 4, "For thus says the Lord, to the eunuchs who keep my Sabbaths, who choose the things that please me, and hold fast my covenant, I will give in my house and within my walls a monument and a name better than sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off." Think about that. He's saying, oh, you have prejudices towards the eunuch. You don't value these people. Let me tell you how much I value them. I value them so much that I intend to let them share my glory and exalt them for all eternity. That's how important they are to me. These people that you say aren't important. Let's make sure we don't let our own prejudices towards people today say that to God. That we don't see these people as worthy of the eternal love and joy of Jesus. And he goes on, he starts to speak of the foreigners, and the eunuchs were necessarily foreigners as well. But he goes on and he says, "And the foreigners who join themselves to the Lord, to minister to him, to love the name of the Lord, and to be his servants, all who keep the Sabbath and do not profane it and hold fast my covenant, these I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples." For everybody. That's what Jesus is talking about. That's what he's upset about. He comes in, he starts turning things over. He's so frustrated because they're excluding people from God. Now, is it specifically the foreigner and things of that nature from the 8th century BC? Maybe still, yeah, because that's been a very common form of discrimination over the years. But let's look closer and see which people exactly that Jesus might be the most upset about being excluded. He comes in and he overturns, well, first he drives out the ones that are buying and selling, turns over the tables of the money changers. This is not a place to make a profit. This is a place where people should come and their hearts should be changed when they leave. This isn't a place to profit. But then look what he does. He turns over the seats of those who sold doves. He could have turned over anybody's seats, all of them. But he turned over the ones that sold doves. There's no place for you to sit here. Now why? Well, what were the doves for? They're for sacrifices. We don't often think of that, though. We have a different image. To understand this, we have to go back. We have to go back to the Old Testament, to Leviticus chapter 5. And after a list of particular sinful things, in Leviticus 5, verse 5, it says, "When you realize your guilt in any of these, you shall confess the sin that you have committed. And you shall bring to the Lord as your penalty for the sin that you have committed a female from the flock, a sheep or a goat, as a sin offering. And the priest shall make atonement on your behalf for your sin." Okay, that sounds more familiar. We have the image of the sacrifice at the temple, the sacrificial lamb, and all that imagery. Then he goes on in the next verse. "But if you cannot afford a sheep, you shall bring to the Lord as your penalty for the sin that you have committed 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering." So who are the doves for? It says if you can't afford it, it's the poor. It's for the poor. And they're just like we saw last week, what Jeremiah was telling them hundreds of years ago. Just about the most ungodly thing you can do is take advantage of the disadvantaged. That's what's happening. And he turns those chairs over. This place where they're standing is the holiest ground in the world at that time. God, through his covenant, his agreement with them, agreed to put his presence in the Holy of Holies in that temple. And that he would protect those people, bless the land, if they would do what he said. If they would have love for God and love for each other in their hearts. The whole point of that, though, was to look out for the disadvantaged, was to protect the widow, protect the orphan, protect the refugee. And the exact opposite was happening. They'd made a mockery of what God had stood for and what that place meant. And so, we have to say to ourselves, do we do that sometimes? And I want to share with you a video that Steve first told me about this man. He's a local comedian. He's been very successful, named Tom May. And at one of his shows at a church, I don't think this is in Louisville, Harrodsburg somewhere. Don't know if that's in Kentucky or not. But he has a surprise and a kind of test for the folks. Thank you, Sammy.
Look like you're pretty healthy. You could work.
Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Tom May.
One time we were out in Shepherdsville.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
That's all right. I went to
They gave me, I got a ticket.
all right. Yeah, hey, why don't you get some of that water?
I just want to dedicate this song to all those struggling in Texas and to all of those that are helping so much. And if you guys can help, if we can just help. But I want to sing this song, dedicate to them. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, the purple mountains, majesty, above the fruited plains, America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crowned thy with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. I love you. I love you. God bless you.
I can't follow that now. That's all right. Yeah, don't judge a book by its cover right there. You know what that was? Don't you judge a book by its cover.
Oh, thank you so much.
Everybody has a hard day sometimes, don't they?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
There were certainly probably some prejudices in some folks' minds, right, when they saw him laying there next to the church. And probably some very interesting things going through their minds as he came into the sanctuary and interrupted Tom's performance. But then we saw what he did. He sang in that powerful voice. An even more powerful song. And what is that song saying? It's a song to bring us all together. It's a song that says, God has shed His grace on us. And what should we do about that? From sea to sea, we should treat each other like family, no matter who we are. That's how we should view people that are so very different than us. Even though we don't know them, we should treat them like family, as children of God. Do we do that all the time? We get shy, we have prejudice. We don't reach out to people sometimes when they're different. Let's try to change that. Maybe sometime soon. Maybe not today, not next week, but sometime in the next few months. Do that. Put yourself out of your comfort zone. Reach out to someone different. Maybe it's somebody that has a different cultural background. Maybe it's somebody in the neighborhood that has a political sign that you don't care for. Maybe it's somebody that you know is dealing with sin in their life that you'd like to distance yourself from even. Maybe it's somebody that you know is very disadvantaged. Reach out to those people. Get to know those people. And let them know Jesus through you. You don't have to tell them about Jesus. Show them about Jesus. Let them see Jesus in the way that His love for them exudes through your heart and through how you treat them. And then, when the time's right, invite them here. Invite them to come here to our house of prayer. And let us make sure that this special house of prayer that we all love is not simply a house of prayer for us, but that it is a house of prayer for all of the other people too. And let us reflect on that as we go to the Lord in prayer, in our time of prayer and invitation this morning.